Welcome back to Goldenridge. Today we're kicking off early planning and massive terraforming for our huge new Western Metropolitan expansion and adding new life and detail to our Lakeside town. So let's get to work. Well, Rockwell's core is finally done, and honestly, it might be my favorite thing I've ever built in City Skylines 2. The layout, the mid-density, the way the rail and roads weave through it, it just feels great. It's gritty and detailed and full of character. I've gone back and forth on a few areas, but now that it feels filled and polished up, this part of the city really captures what Goldenridge is all about. But just beyond these mountains, over the western ridge, is something totally different. A whole new region of the map that's wide open and ready for whatever comes next. And that means we've got to start thinking about how we're going to approach this new space. What do we want it to be? The idea is to build a true metropolitan hub, dense, modern, with West Coast infrastructure at the heart of it. Think layered transit, sprawling freeways, mixed-use cores. This is where the region really starts to scale, and it all begins right over these mountains. So let's start thinking about how we're going to approach this and what steps we need to take to prepare our landscape for the new coming city that we're going to be building here. So from a high level, there's obviously a lot of space here. I mean, you can see what we've built off in the distance, and as big as it feels when we're over there, it's only a fraction of the size of what we have left. So let's talk about some of the things that are not working very well. Let's tone our clouds down a bit so we can really see what we're doing. So the first problem is this wild looking kind of Norwegian, kind of Miami, Florida Keys type highway thing that we're gonna just completely get rid of, because that just doesn't make any sense for the region, and the layout itself is pretty wild. Like that's a thing. So we're gonna get rid of that. The other issue is there's a massive kind of step between our landscape and our ocean. And I want this to be a lot more seamless and realistic. And so the more we go up the coastline, it balances out a little bit, but it still is all over the place. And then the river we have going on, which I love and want to keep, has an even bigger height advantage or height disadvantage here. I mean, it's almost as big as these massive electrical towers between the land and the river. So we're going to want to keep that river, but we're going to have to flatten out a lot of this land. And getting the ground to be flat and balanced with the water is unfortunately not as straightforward as kind of it sounds, you know, to think about doing. We're also going to have to figure out what we want to do with this rail line that oddly just kind of loops around here. So I think what we'll do is end up cutting it off about here and here, having a central station that these both feed into, along with another rail line coming from the southwest. And that can either come along this way or maybe even cross, where we'll have a bridge right about here so that people don't have to drive all the way around the bay. That'll kind of be a little San Francisco Bay Area influence there, with something like the Richmond San Mateo Bridge, something like that. So I also think that there's going to be some inspiration from Portland in terms of the way our city crosses this river, and maybe we widen the river up just a little bit. And I also want to take some inspiration from Seattle, other parts of San Francisco, and maybe even a little bit of Southern California, just in terms of rural neighborhoods and sprawling residential. And when we get way out here, this might be a little more of a Southern California and a little more of a Northern California theme there. So there is quite a bit to do. And I think the first thing we're going to do is chop off a lot of these rail lines. So we're just going to go ahead and crop those right about there and get rid of that. I'm also going to get rid of this highway starting there and take it all the way over here and end it there. And then it looks like there is a surface on this, some sort of gray surface, which is an interesting choice, and we'll get rid of that. And then I think for the most part, we're just going to get rid of this little island atoll stretch looking thing. We'll keep, so I'm just going to get rid of all this. I think we'll keep a bit of this part of it in case we end up wanting to do some sort of industrial bay thing here. I do like that it creates this little inlet here. And then over here, we're going to get rid of it going to there. I like this little island thing, and I like having that there is a bridge that kind of goes over there, and this can be some industry or some other thing. So that, I think, is looking all good. But we are actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we are going to get rid of the highway all the way going to really about here. And we're just going to crop and get rid of all of that, because we are going to have to do some real serious lowering of this landscape. As I mentioned, like this looks crazy, and this river really looks crazy. I think we can also get rid of this electrical line. We will have this back at some point, but not quite like this. So let's take this back to about here. So everything else over in this region is going to be paused for now. We're just not going to be able to do anything with that until we at least get some of these roads reconnected in the trains. And we'll also get rid of this road going up to here. So I'm just going to hit play so that our trains and the cars that are driving around can go away. And let's see, this electrical, actually, we're going to take that to there. Also, there is this whole area over here. I don't know if I've ever really flown around over here, but we've got this little inlet, which I think would be for an interesting town. And then also this area that we'll get to at some point. So there is still quite a bit of areas other than our large area out here to work on. We will also finish up this town over here, and then we'll have to start developing some rural stuff over there around Rockwell. But I do want to get some prep work for this, because it is time to start thinking about what we're going to do here. So I had been thinking about having a city center downtown core kind of in this area. I think having buildings on either mainly on one side and tall buildings kind of around the other side of this river could be really cool. And then letting the industry and all that kind of stuff kind of trickle out towards what it looks like they already have kind of built in some sort of dock stuff. But again, we're going to have to manipulate the height of all this, because that just is crazy. And it looks like there's also maybe some of that stuff that was built in over here. And then I also want to have, like I said, I want to have a train line. This one's pretty straightforward. This one can kind of come in and we'll have a central station. This one I think would kind of wrap around and meet as well here. And then we'll have another one coming through this way to meet downtown. And that way we'll have most of the area covered by a central train line, and we can set up either trams or buses or subways in between to, once you get off a stop, to kind of get into areas that the trains don't cover. So I think that'll work out really well. We'll probably also end up with an airport, probably on this side, or maybe over here could be a good spot. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any plans, any ideas for this, I'll kind of leave this view up for a second if you want to pause here and take a look and kind of get some ideas to think about. I think it's a lot of flat land, which I've talked about before, not totally loving. I liked working within the constraints of a lot of the landscapes, because when there's so much open stuff, it kind of, you almost have too many options. So I'm a little overwhelmed by this space, but I'm excited to get some more sprawling stuff, some bigger highways and some bigger downtown cores, and using some of these really larger assets we have that we just didn't have room for and don't make sense in kind of smaller mountain towns like we've built before. So for now, I think the first thing to do really is to go through really quickly, and I'm just going to smooth out the edges of some of these, this landscape. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the soften tool, smooth tool, and just kind of probably more like 40% and just kind of smooth this stuff out so that it's feeling a little more realistic, because these hard edges, I think, come in from having the heat or the height map data. They just don't quite read the nuance of the edges of land for water. And so just smoothing this stuff out, you can already see is going to feel like that already. You know, if you just look at this compared to that, that just feels a lot better. And even when you got a little bit of this, that's fine. But compared to this, these really strong, harsh edges, that just is not working. So we'll do that. And then we'll come back here and talk about how we're going to lower all of this ground down to be more near sea level. All right, so that's just a quick little cleanup of the edges of stuff. I think a lot of these areas are just looking a little smoother, transitioning into the water. And I kind of built this little area out. I don't really have a plan for it, but it seemed like it could be a cool cove for, I don't know, something. Some industry or a resort, or I don't know. Let me know if you have any ideas. We can always tuck this back underwater and just make this back into a little bay if we don't think of anything. But it seemed like could be a cool little area to build out. So now let's take a look at the land here. So if you turn on our topography lines, you can kind of see that overall it's not a huge slope. So if we click up here, we're at about 33 yards, and down here we're at about 29. So it's not huge, but it's still enough to make a difference. So 30, 30.8, 30.9, 33, 30, 31, 30, 29. So yeah, overall it's pretty good, but I think the real issue is that the edges here, over here, are actually a bit lower. So the edge here, the actual water edge, 25, and the water edge here, 23. So it does slope up a bit, and it looks like the water kind of slopes up a bit too, obviously, which is a little strange, but that's just kind of how this game works. I think the water ultimately is all flowing away. So I think what we'll try to do is we want to lower, and let's see, what's this at down here? This is at 12, and up here we're at 30. So we are going to want to lower this quite a bit. So let's just take it even halfway down from where the river's edge is. And let's see how that affects over here. Is that going to be, see, that's going to be too low, right? That water is going to creep in. So here we're going to have to be at about 22, I think, in order to stay above the water line. And honestly, maybe we even go a little higher, maybe to like 23, just to give ourselves a little cushion. And then ultimately, if you end up building kind of a road here with like a quay wall, you don't want it to be, I think that was on the wrong side. You don't want it to be too close to the water. You want to have a little bit of space so that it doesn't feel like it's right on the water. So something like that, I think that's probably pretty good. I think that's enough. So that puts us at, where were we at about 23. So we'll go with that. And we're just going to go around the edges here because that's really what we have to pay the most attention to. And I do want to see already at 23 now. Over here, 23 is fine. Over here, 23 is not quite. I don't quite get why that is. The water is so strange in this game. So, and the difference between 22 or 23 and 24 or somewhere in between is negligible, and we can smooth that out and plant flat, do flat stuff with that. So that's going to be fine. But that has now become so close. So we're going to have to just slowly work our way up in order to give us, an edge that works all the way going up here. So we're just going to have to slowly work our way along here and just keep an eye on where the water kind of works. I did turn the simulation back on because I do need to see the water moving in real time. There's some train routes that are going to be angry, but they'll survive. So just trying to keep this, as good as we can to stay above the water and not flood, but also keep it fairly, low. And we can build out, depending on what these areas end up being, we can build them out a bit. And it's okay if there's some slopes and there's some hills and peninsulas and stuff that kind of creep up, and that's, some area like this, maybe we want this built up to be kind of a hill edge. We can have some more elevated coastline, and that's fine. But I'd like to start at least by finding kind of where our low threshold is, and then we can go back and raise things up if we want. So that's kind of all okay. I think I'm just going to actually skip that for the reasons I was just talking about. But now if we look over here, so we're just right on that. And if the water fluctuates at all, it's just not something we're going to want to have to deal with. So we'll just go all the way along this. And this is all actually feeling pretty good. And when I looked around here earlier, this is where stuff does start to feel kind of okay. So I think that is going to be good. And let's check over on this side. Yeah, that's also got kind of just a weird surface here. So, we'll worry about smoothing all this out when the time comes. But overall, I think the height of this is feeling pretty good. What's that at? About 30.6. So that's coming up. So then let's take a look over here. And I think that, depending on what we want this to be, let's see, we take this at about, what do we say, 23 something. So bringing this down, and this will likely be docks and industry stuff. This really, I guess right here will be more of a break wall or breakwater for the way where the river comes out. But this, I think this is be a good area for some industry, and we're just going to want this, I think, overall to be a little lower. It's a little hard to think ahead about what we're going to do and what kind of elevation we might want, but I just think that ultimately it's better to start low on the edges and work your way up inland and have the elevation go up that way than the other way around. I just think it ends up being more realistic. So this is all feeling pretty good. But then you can see when we come over to this river, So even that is still pretty high, but that definitely feels better. And I also think ultimately we will end up widening at least some parts of this river, just to, because right now, you know, if you think about let's see, just to get some frame of reference, well, let's flatten out both sides of this real quick. So we'll just flatten this area out and then bring this side down to meet it. And if you think about somewhere like Portland, the river that kind of runs in between that is fairly, you know, it's fairly wide, where you really feel like you need massive bridges. And I don't know that I want every place to need seemingly like large bridges. I want some areas to just be able to have regular roads go across, you know, as a bridge, kind of like this kind of thing. But if you kind of look at the scale of that, that's not too bad. Let's grab a car or a truck here or something for scale. So, but that's not nothing. I mean, that's a good 20, 30 feet. So, you know, that's definitely a much better place than we were at before starting to lower this stuff. So I think we're just going to go through and lower kind of all this land. The problem becomes when, you know, what you do is about 30 feet here and you start getting up here, and this is all looking good and that's all working out. And then, you know, that's only got a couple of, so here's the problem though, right? Is that that's all the same height, but look how much bigger the gap now is here. So the water is definitely, I guess, lower here. The difference of this being 25, and now I guess we were on the wrong one, but still, that's a pretty significant drop. And so we just have to make sure that we keep this going all the way, and that we have a pretty reasonable, you know, drop in elevation change. And then where we do want things to meet up, so now we're looking at this, and that's fairly reasonable on that side, and we bring it down and it's reasonable on this side. But then when you come down here, that does work out about the same. So I do think though that we're getting, you know, this elevation. See, look how much lower that is now here. That's like at the water level. So it really is just constantly changing where, you know, what height makes it, which, you know, is fairly realistic, I suppose. You know, not in this game, you end up making everything super flat, and is kind of annoying, but it does end up making things a lot easier to build. I think that the easiest way to play with elevation in this game is to start with a fairly flat land and then build things up, you know, intentionally for specific overpasses or bridges, or just, you know, kind of making your own elevation. So I think if this is going to be kind of our main city area, this can be an area where the river can be maybe a little wider, and we'll just lower this down. And then let's see. So if we take a road here and put that down, and let's try our same thing. We'll take a car, and I mean, that again, that's a pretty big, that's a pretty significant drop off. So that almost still feels a little too high. So I'm going to go through and just try to find the right height and balance this out, and then spread this kind of stuff all throughout this whole area. And I think what we will do also, one thing you can kind of do to minimize the difference is when you do find areas like this where you're only 2 or 3 contour lines off, is then you can turn your brush and your strength up and use the soften tool and spread those out quite a bit. And even though there is a slope there, it makes it a much smoother slope. And if you want to extend that, you can also then use, of course, the slope tool and really spread those out, so that effectively now, if you're, you know, putting on some roads, you know, it's a 1% incline, and more or less, things will lay flat. So we'll go through and flatten that out, and then we'll come back and take a look at kind of the shape and contour and depth and width of the river and what we want to do there. So that's a start. There's certainly some stuff with the riverbanks we're going to have to keep working out. I didn't get too in the weeds with it, but I think that these banks, there's a lot of this jagged stuff, but areas like this are feeling much better, and overall the drop off is just not quite so extreme. And again, I want to widen some areas, but we'll worry about that. But overall, if we turn on contour lines, you can kind of see there's some sloped areas here and here, but this is all now more or less the same height and kind of this. So we still got a couple of levels going on, but they're much more spread out and they're much more balanced. So being able to build some city stuff, some real like downtown, real urban city stuff around this area will be much easier now that this is much flatter. So yeah, I think overall this is a really great start. We do have some flooding here, it appears, so let's just clean that up real quick. But overall, yeah, this is feeling a bit better, and we'll still go through and figure out kind of exactly the heights and the layouts and what we want when we're actually doing it and figuring out what we want to build. But I just wanted to give myself some groundwork. So now I think real quick, let's just take a look at some ideas. These won't be anywhere near final, but I just want to kind of play a little bit with some of the railroads and some of the highway stuff and lay some stuff out and see what you guys think about kind of the higher level of what I've been thinking. So I think for the most part, I've been thinking about so this is our main train line coming from all the way from Blackfoot and from Rockwell. And so this, I think, you know, if we do something along the lines of, you know, kind of bringing this around and maybe we have it, you know, cross here and get a station in there somewhere. It can come over like this and actually no. So I want to take this. I want this to keep going straight because this track, where is it? This one, I want to kind of service this area. So this one would come down about into here and maybe cut in something like that and then come in, and I'm not exactly sure where we would have our main station, but kind of come into the city like that. This one, I think, will do a little more going around this little butte here. So maybe more of this kind of thing. And then this can come down and can also, you know, meet in here like this. And then we'd have one coming, you know, out of here maybe, or here, and running around and probably not crossing any wider. I think right here makes sense. So this one could essentially kind of come in through here, just take a little turn in there and come down through this way and, you know, then could meet these other two somewhere like that. And we can, you know, again, these are going to get deleted, but I'm just trying to map some stuff out. So that way we've got pretty significant coverage. Obviously there's a gap here, but we could get some trams and some buses and some subways or stuff to kind of connect here. And if you're living in here, need to reach in there. But that gives us pretty good coverage overall. And then, you know, these could either have a terminal station here, or maybe we still have one that crosses here and kind of comes out and could service down here, and maybe another one that would come here and make its way out to some industry stuff there. So that probably makes sense, that kind of thing. And then for highways, let's see, let's find highways. We'll go 3-lane, we'll go parallel down to maybe half. So we've got one coming from here already, and this is our main road from Blackfoot. So I think rather than just continue this one, I guess we could. Maybe this one continues with 2. And let's see what these are a little wider, so just for the sake of conversation. So maybe this one continues on its own and kind of maybe can run like that. And then we'd have ones that are 3 do kind of more of a loop. So we'd have one crossing here with a bridge, and so that can be like one of these larger suspension bridges. And then we'd probably want to, let's see. So we'd probably want a highway coming in kind of like this. And I think this is pretty hilly, and we could flatten some of this out, but I like keeping as much of the natural terrain as we have, although those two are a little much. But so maybe this does actually meet up with that. Probably makes sense. You know, we do this kind of thing. We have this guy coming down through here, and, you know, meeting up, coming through like this, and I do want to do something. You know, this can kind of come down to our industrial area here, and then so if we meet up with that, then this one could run across out like this and kind of curve down around and get a little maybe coastal thing going on and meet up with some of our industry here. And then probably we'd want something kind of crossing these in like that maybe. Obviously these would be big fancy intersections, but so again, I'll just kind of leave this up, and if you guys want to pause it here and take a look. Very rough, but I'm thinking something in that general idea, and then, you know, we'll fill in from there. But this gives us kind of a nice loop highway. You know, we cut across in the middle, we terminate here, and then obviously like this, you know, this one would meet in here somewhere, and that is a train track. This, our bridge here to the other side would, you know, would somehow meet up like that, and so that's how you would get along here, and this highway would go down that way. So I'm gonna keep thinking about it. You guys think about it. Let me know if you have any ideas. Feel free to convey those however makes the most sense to you. But yeah, that's roughly what I'm thinking here, and I think that gives us some sort of structure. This all looks terrible at the moment, but yeah. All right, and then to wrap up today, I wanted to make our way back over to this area. This is our new little lakeside area that we don't have a name for yet, so we'll need a name for that. So you guys have been great with names. Let me know what you have. And I just wanted to go through and drop in some detail stuff and kind of get this a little more finished out. So the first thing I want to do is extend this little beach area just a little more now that we have kind of the houses in, just a little tiny bit more. And overall, we'll smooth this out. And then I wanted to get another alleyway road in here. So kind of, I think it was going to come from here. This would be the kind of the beach access road. So this would kind of come down and meet like that, and then it could come through, and this can be your beach access road. So I guess now that we have that, let's bring this out even just a little farther. There we go. Because I do want this to be a nice kind of beach town, you know. That's why we're getting way too high on the smooth strength. So there we can smooth that out a little better. And I always forget, you really have to overextend, because the smoothness is always going to take away from what you have. So get that out a little farther than you're really going to want it. And ultimately, once you smooth it out, it'll start pulling back a bit. All right, so that's not bad. And then I think we have we have a custom alley with parking that we used before. So I wanted to throw that on maybe just there, actually. Do we want to have it on the other side though? Let's turn off snapping here, and we could have it on the inside maybe. No, I think we like it kind of on right about there. Yeah, that'll be good. And then we can actually use our beach base. So we'll get our this in probably going up to right along the water line, and connect that out. And then we can get, so that was the base. Wet light, we'll just kind of layer these a little bit here. I don't use these sand ones much, so we might have to figure out exactly the right layering order. Now let's see, that's already looking pretty good. And then I like the golden sand, so we'll do the thick. And just bring that in a bit. We should actually probably, because we want, ooh, that's a tough line right there. Let's see what happens when we get these other ones in. But I'm thinking now that actually we're going to want, because we actually want the sand to take up a bit of the, the actual beach itself. So let's go back and golden sand. I'm actually going to start this So we'll do, so golden sand dark. This one should be all the way kind of under the water. And then golden sand wet light. This one can come in, you know, kind of where the tide, the waves kind of come up. So right kind of where the water is. And it looks like we're actually getting some flooding here. So we'll have to fix that in a second. And then this one will get in. So this is the one where people will actually be kind of hanging out on. So we can get that one kind of up here closer to the road. And then now we can let this kind of start to fade away. And get these in here. And just keep going over with these layers. And hopefully these will start to help that area, because that's a tough transition there. So all the way in with these. Keep it on this side of the road though. And just gonna see if we can't just go over the areas where there seems to be pretty. So that is, and that's a hard line, but so we might adjust some of that a bit, but that is a nice looking little beach area. And I think we're gonna have to bring this up just maybe one level in order to make sure that the water stays. Yep, just bring that up. That'll keep the water a little farther away. And just gonna push that out, and then we'll turn the smoothing way down. And that's already looking much better. All right, so that's not bad. And then the other thing I really want to do here for now is just really, I left a lot of open space, but I want this to be very tree dense. So we're going to keep Anarchy off for now, and then get a bunch of these trees in, and then we can get them a little even denser where we turn Anarchy off and get some back in there. So let's just see where these will go for now. Certainly not as much as we'll want, but it'll give us a good place to start. I'm even going to turn this up quite a bit more so we can just try to really get these into every place that they'll go on their own. So already that's looking a lot better. And then this other tool that is great is this change the age of tool of trees. So the trees that are like already in, on buildings, you can actually make bigger. So the ones that come with buildings, this is super helpful. Let's see, like, there you go, like that one and those. So you can just kind of take the trees that are already attached to any of the with the homes we've placed, you can kind of bring those up and just kind of make that feel a bit denser. And then the other thing I want to do is I think we'll go in and we're just going to get rid of all the grass surfaces, because these just don't look great. And yeah, we're just going to get rid of those. And I think it helps these houses feel a bit more integrated into the actual landscape when you use the natural grass. So yeah, we'll keep all the cement and all the other stuff, but then we're going to fill this in with a lot of our own surfaces that'll make the grass here feel a bit better. All right, so let's go back now. Let's try some, with Anarchy still off, we'll try to see if we can fit any oak trees in. Not much. These do take up a bit of space. Let's try bushes. Bushes we can get a bunch in, so that will help. Just sprinkle all of those in. All right, and now I'm going to take this brush and make it much, much smaller, much smaller. And we're going to turn Anarchy on and just fill out some of the areas that not having Anarchy wouldn't let us get as dense as we wanted. So in yards and just kind of anywhere we can. I'm thinking of this again as kind of a South Tahoe type area, and if you look on Google Earth or if you've been there, there's lots of just these neighborhoods that are really just in the middle of pretty dense tree areas. So you drive through these kind of residential areas like this, and they are very, very heavy with trees. So I think for oaks, we're going to go just individual and try to get some of these in that just will fill up a bit of this space. And just try to drop a couple more of these in. There was some spots that just weren't quite getting them in like that. And trees are certainly a bit of a cheat code in terms of detailing and eating up kind of space. But also for a build like this that is, you know, in a very mountainous, evergreen kind of place, that, you know, makes a lot of sense. So we'll get rid of these. The gas station. So yeah, that's I mean, that already is great. I mean, I've certainly been to some lake towns like this where you know, just right at the tree line just comes right up to the beach, and yeah, and that is working pretty good. We can still smooth this out a bit. Our elevation of this road and stuff is looking a little funky, so we can clean some of that up. Just kind of bring that in and tilt that down a bit, and probably bring this up a little bit. And I think that looks a bit better. Maybe we bring that up. See, and I love like just kind of having this train pass by above. Looks sweet. So yeah, we'll fill this in with some more surfaces. I think even like just the regular dirt surfaces that we use all the time. This kind of thick riverbed one, just kind of having this one in here, I think will be good to kind of differentiate the dirt from the sand. Because ultimately this is, you know, the sand is really just for the beach. It's not like a sandy area. So there you go. That already feels pretty good. And yeah, we'll get some more detail in here, but yeah, that's feeling much better. And I think, you know, driving down this kind of avenue between all these kind of nice houses and rental homes and vacation homes and all that, you know, with no sidewalks and all these big trees. Yeah, I think this is looking great. You got a nice modern house, you know, they right here on the water. And so, yeah, there's a little more detailing to do here, but that's a great start for our little lakeside resort town. So let me know if you have a name, because Broad Springs stinks. Resort town name for now. Great. So let me know about that. And yeah, as always, thanks so much for watching. Bit of a slow week on uploads. Had some stuff to do, but we'll get back into the swing of things. Thanks everyone who watched the short cinematic video that I posted, just kind of an overview of the sights and sounds and what an early morning here in Goldenridge would look like. That was super fun to make. So I'll do something else when we have a little more stuff built out over in our new area. But yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you next time. Bye.